What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Absolute Auction Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Miner. With me, as always, is my buddies Adam and Mark. Adam, what's going on?
Hey, man. We are only 10 days away from a real football game. Hall of Fame games, 10 days away.
Heck yeah! And Mark, welcome back. You had the week off, man. You weren't here with us last week, but you were here, but you weren't here.
Oh yeah, happy to be back. Happy that I was able to auction with you guys. Unfortunately, couldn't make the stream. I was on vacation in Delaware. The internet was a little too spotty for me to actually stream along with you. But I was really happy to get in the draft. I feel like you guys did a really great job. I was able to watch back, and I think you gave some good insight. And it's always fun to draft with our listeners, our friends out in Twitter space. But yeah, back, ready, refreshed, and ready to talk more auctions.
Right. And here I am. I mean, this is not my original background, guys. I don't think this is my house. I'm actually on vacation, but I can't miss this podcast. I have to be here for it. I love it. I had to go to the best part of the house I could find, which is the upstairs, which seems to be right above the router. So I had the best signal right now in the house. If I move from here, I'll disconnect. So I'm actually in my bedroom of where we're staying at. So if you guys are anywhere in the Muskegon, Michigan area, hit me up. I'll be at Michigan's Adventures tomorrow on Tuesday.
Nice.
So
Nice.
Oh, all right, guys. So we got a great episode coming your way as we're going to talk about some AAV, some players we like, dislike, and players that we know we're actually kind of good with the values on. As we say, too high, too low, and just right, right?
Yep.
Let's see. And then, Adam, we as I forgot to mention it last week, we have a listener league going on, right?
We sure do.
And remember last week we said the secret word. And, of course, it took us forever because we were having so much fun drafting, and Mark missed it there. If Mark was there, he probably would have been able to keep it clean for us and actually, give us the idea of what to need to do. But we are starting a listener league, guys. If you want to get in the listener league, listen back to last week's episode. That was the first word that came out. It's somewhere between 40 minutes and 60 minutes in because Adam and I were so involved in the draft. This week, we have another one coming your way. So be on the lookout for that one. As you will hear us say, the secret word is, and that's going to be the secret word. All right, guys. Let's get into this week. We have training camps kicking off. Mark, what part of the training camp are you looking forward to right now?
Everybody overreacting to rookie and youth hype videos all across the land. That's really what I'm looking most forward to because that means that their prices are going up and chances are I was never paying for them anyway. So drain some more money out of the room and I can pick up the well-tested vets for a cheaper price.
Oh, I mean, come on. Adam, how about you? How you feel about that Patrick Mahomes, deep ball throw? Is he at the QB1 again? Are we ready to draft, spend a big dollar on him?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mark, said everything perfectly. It's like these hype videos are just getting people fired up and out of control to spend a lot of money in their auctions. It's the one time a year, we're super excited. Football's coming back, and everyone's just rearing to go. Me, myself included. So let's do it.
That's what
we got Xavier Worthy. We got Jackson Smith and Jigba with a play out on Twitter today.
One-handed catches season is in full force right now, isn't it?
Of course, yes. Generational talent season, as you may think of it. Everybody's a generational talent. Exactly, best shape of your life. Generational talent season. I love that season because everybody else can just pay attention to that, and by the time they get to their drafts, it's too late. So
yeah. Guys, I mean, listen to this news. Take it with a grain of salt. Don't look too far into it because some people will throw you the wrong direction and detour you to make you spend more on these players just because they think like, oh, yeah, like you just said, Jackson's been the Jigba doing the one-handed catch. I saw a tweet on there, someone already saying, oh, man, I'm glad I already got so many shares of him already. I'm like, it's one catch. It doesn't count. It's practice. These aren't games yet, people. Let's relax.
They're not tackling. Yeah.
No, exactly. Yeah, they're in their jersey and helmet. They're not really doing anything. It's when the pads come on, that's when we really need to start looking more into it. So it's exciting to have the hype week starting. Don't look too much into it. Wait till next month when we start seeing, was it week 3 of the preseason games was when they usually do like their dress rehearsal. So that'd be more of what I'd be looking at. Maybe in week 2, I think they might even move it up a little bit. But that'd be the way I like to look at it.
I think as when you look at an off season, you really have to take the whole picture involved. There's going to be everyone's going to have a nice piece of news about them at some point or another, probably. Whether they're healing faster than expected, or whether they're in the best shape of their life, or whatever ends up being. If they don't have a nice piece of news, they might have a nice highlight that you catch from the social media team of the team. What you're really looking for is a pattern more than you're looking for one individual data point, whether it be a nice play or what have you. You want to get a lot of good buzz, a lot of good articles, not just maybe some speculation articles. That's fine. That's circumstantial though. But if you start to see, they back it up finally when they get to training camp. The team backs it up or the player backs it up by showing that they're performing well in training camp, in preseason, or maybe they're a player that we know is just fine and they're not playing in the preseason games because the coaches and the team and the staff know that they're ready to go and ready to roll. You need to sort of see all that kind of and take it all into perspective, not just one highlight catch, one nice puff piece. That individually doesn't help you if you're going to chase every single one of those.
No, not at all. Not at all. All right. Yeah. So, like we said, just chill with the hype, guys. It's okay. Enjoy it while you can. They're great videos, but it's not worth getting all into it.
Yeah. Remember that it's like, think of it more, just compartmentalize it into your excitement for football being back. Don't compartmentalize it into, I need this for my fantasy team.
Or another way I like to look at it, a funny way actually. It's like those crappy movies that suck so bad. Like you watch them, like I can't believe I wasted my time. The good trailers. They had a really good trailer. Like, oh man, this movie looks interesting. It's a great trailer. This is like the trailer of like the NFL season. We're seeing bits and pieces of it that don't really matter, but it's just the fun of it, of getting the excitement of football back, because we're really in that dead part of like sports season right now. Baseball was on the All-Star break. It's just starting to come back. I'm not really a huge baseball fan, so as of right now, I don't have much really to watch when it comes to non-football related things.
Yeah, the NFL knows how to get its fans excited. I'll give them that.
Absolutely, Adam. Absolutely. All right, Adam. Back to what we were talking about, and you too, Mark. Was last week we did this one QB auction mock draft with 12 drafters, and I have to say that this had to be one of the most hardest mock drafts I've ever done. Mark, what's your idea on this? Because Adam and I were bantering back and forth on it while we were doing the pod last week. What did you see last week?
So I think we end up drafting and mock drafting with quite a few of these players that were in this draft again tonight, or that night rather. But I felt like we all kind of changed up our strategy quite a bit. We saw in weeks previous a lot of the quarterbacks, a lot of the high end elite quarterbacks going for over 25, closer to 30 or even $40. I think Josh Allen, even we'll talk about his AAV later. And that's obviously way too high for me. And I kind of wanted to, so I started the draft. I had the first nomination and I kind of felt like, all right, I don't mind getting one of these guys for under 25 bucks. 20 to 25 is really about my limit. So I pushed out Josh Allen thinking that maybe he'd go for, in that $30 range. He ended up only going for 21. I took it and I felt like, okay, great. That was a steal. And then it really got crazy how cheap the quarterback prices got after that. I felt like $21 for Josh Allen was great. I was doing really well. And then I see Mahomes go for 13 and I say, oh my gosh, how did that happen? I still think in a vacuum off the first pick, $21 to Josh Allen is good. But it doesn't feel great when you watch, everybody else go for under 15.
Yeah, getting Patrick Mahomes for 13, I loved it. Adam, what did you get? Anthony Richardson for, was it about the
I
same price?
I got him for 13, which looking today at the AAV was actually the cheapest he's ever gone for, which I was really surprised. I thought everyone did a really good job in the mock. I think that the more people do it, the more they, get used to just the feel of how an auction, you know, happens. I think everyone did a really good job of trying to counter everyone else's strategies and what they were trying to do with their rosters. I was really surprised. Like Mark said, I mean, the quarterbacks were sort of, coming in hot and heavy, and then we kind of hit that precipice, and then all the prices just kind of dropped, which is to be expected. But overall, I was really happy with not just how my team turned out, but just how everyone did in the draft overall. I thought everyone did a fantastic job.
Yeah, like it was a fun draft. I quite enjoyed it. I tried to do, I guess I was going the hero RB approach because I went with Saquon Barkley and then Zach Charbonnet, but I left too much money on the table. So that was my downfall, not paying attention because as you and I were talking, Adam, you and I kept losing track of what players were going, and then we're losing out on bids. We're like, oh crap, I forgot to bid on that guy. I should have bid on him. So
Yeah.
that's why it's always great to be, if you can be 100% involved in your auction without being like, say, like, I would like to say like the board bitch or anything like that, then it's a lot easier to maintain your drafts. Like if you're maintaining the board and trying to understand what's going on or trying to talk about it, it's a lot harder to keep up with it compared to just sitting there and going, oh yeah, I can bet on this guy, I can bet that one, or oh yeah, I got plenty of money, I got $11, I can put on him. Let's put 11,
Mm-hmm.
2, 1, and then as we were thinking about it, like, oh crap, let's hit. Nope, too late, can't hit bid.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, like this draft was a fun draft. Like when I saw market Josh Allen for $21, like, oh man, that sucks. But as the draft went on, though, it's just like everyone was just right on top of each other. Like we were all along basically going like hardcore against each other. It was a lot of fun. It was probably like one of the funnest drafts I had in a long time.
Yeah, I would agree.
How about you, Mark? Do you think that was probably like one of the best drafts you've been in a long time?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. It had me stressed though. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, even still when the prices for quarterback went down, I didn't see like anyone really overpaying, like at least too egregiously for any of the top end talent. Like it's hard to read what these prices say, but like I don't. It looks like Christian McCaffrey went for under $60. Brees Hall went for under 50. CD Lamb I think went for pretty reasonable price. Like I got Justin Jefferson for $49, which I think is about like right where he's gonna go. We'll talk about that later. But it didn't feel like we lost. It was just weird things that happen in an auction. Quarterbacks go way cheaper collectively, but really it's hard to see exactly where that paid back. I think it paid back a lot in maybe RB2 budgeting. But even still, like I don't see a lot of players that are like way out of what their normal price range is.
Nah, I could have spent $11 more on a RB2 and actually been better at that position compared to everywhere else I was at. But oh well, shit happens. What can I say? So moving on, guys, we're gonna do a thing called too high, too low, and just right. And what this pertains to is the AAV, which is the average auction value of all the mocks that Adam has put together for between 1QB and super flex. And one player I love to see, because as we put the whole show sheet together, I took everyone's list. We're going to start off with my buddy Kyle Pitts, because everyone knows how high I am on him. Mark, are we too high, too low, or just right on Kyle Pitts right now?
Well, I've got Kyle Pitts too high right now. In general, I've not been a Kyle Pitts believer. And generally, I don't really believe in any player until I see that they've done it on the NFL field. I think he was a great college prospect, but we're 3 years in. He's got a new coaching staff, a new quarterback. We don't know how it's going to go, and he hasn't really proven it to me yet, altogether. So I just look at his price, $14 in 1QB. Is that right? $16 in Superflex. I look at those prices, and then I look at a guy like George Kittle, like Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram's most likely going to out-target Kyle Pitts. George Kittle would most likely outproduce Kyle Pitts. So when I see them go for $8 and $9, and I see Kyle Pitts go for $14, when I don't have anything to go off of that makes me feel like he's going to surpass those two guys, why take the shot?
Ooh.
And if
Why
you look
take
at
the
this,
shot?
I'm just saying, and if you look at this, he's go every time George Kittle, almost every time George Kittle is going less than Kyle Pitts. And I just kind of believe I like the offensive system. One time George Kittle went above. I just like the offensive system that's out in San Francisco a little more. And I trust that George Kittle has done it. He's been one of the best tight ends, in recent years. And I'd rather take that production over Pitts, especially if I can get a $5+ discount.
Yeah, Adam, at that discount, how do you feel about George Kittle over Kyle Pitts right now? Do you think Kyle Pitts is too high, too low, or would you rather wait and kick the can than take George Kittle?
Kyle Pitts is like one of those very polarizing fantasy players. I feel like people are either like super on him or just don't want anything to do with him. And I think Kittle almost is kind of in that same boat. Like their offense in, San Francisco is super potent. They've got, an ascending quarterback. And again, people have strong feelings about Brock Purdy too. But Kittle, like I feel with Kittle, his production's been such a roller coaster. Like you've got so many highs and lows, just peaks and valleys with him. And if you're drafting him, you have to be prepared that he's going to have those weeks that he's going to score 20 points. And he's going to have those weeks where he might only get like 3 or 4, in full PPR. So it's like, it's a risk. And I think with Pitts, because of the new offense, Arthur Smith is gone. They've got a good quarterback, with Cousins. I think things are lining up more so for Pitts, to put in a good season. I think if the price is right, I'm probably leaning more towards Pitts just because I think the offense may just be more explosive. They might be able to just funnel more targets his way versus in San Francisco. There's going to be a lot more, target competition.
More mouths to feed, as you like to say?
Yeah. So with that regard, I'm probably leaning a little bit towards Kyle Pitts at his price.
So Kyle Pitts, are you and I on the same page of Kyle Pitts being just right? Because I am high on Kyle Pitts right now when it comes to him, because I feel like that first year, he had an anomaly. He came out, 1,000 yards, first rookie to do it in the longest time since I think Mike. Was it Mike Ditka? I think it was Mike Ditka. But this fourth year, I think this is the year to get him. That if you really want to pay up for him, I like his value. I also love George Kittle's value. So to be honest with you, George Kittle is actually my fall off. Like if I can't get Kyle Pitts at all, I will move on and get George Kittle at a better price. Like if the Kyle Pitts price starts getting too high, like as we saw, $15, $16, $17, $18. If he starts pushing like 20, and I'll step away and I'll drop myself down to George Kittle. So I love the value. I love the player. But if the price gets too high, if someone else in my league is high on Kyle Pitts too, they can have him at that price. I'll drop down to someone else.
Yeah, I think Pitts is the kind of tight end where it's like if you're in your draft and someone is just gung ho on getting Pitts, he's one of those guys where you can just kind of pivot away from, and not probably feel too bad about it. But I also think that he does have the possibility this year of just exploding, even though he's been, the fantasy community has been talking about that for 2 years now, and it hasn't happened. But it's like, if there was going to be a year that he's going to do it, it's going to be this year.
All right, Adam. As you said, speaking of exploding, there's one player I like a lot, and I think he has potential to be the number one at the position. But what are your thoughts on Anthony Richardson right now? Is he too high, too low or just right based on his value?
Well, let me get over to his. There we go. So I think Richardson is pretty much just about right. I think that if we were drafting purely on potential, Richardson would probably be a lot more expensive. I do think some drafters have concerns about the injuries that he sustained last season. He suffered a concussion in week 2 that knocked him out for a week, and then he had his big shoulder injury, his AC joint injury to his throwing shoulder that unfortunately ended his season. Draft Sharks right now projects Richardson to miss about 2.5 games. And with all that said, I do think the potential for injury is baked into his price right now. In one QB leagues, he's averaging $17, super flex for 43. So I think the potential for injury is baked into his price, which I think is fair. I also think that if Richardson stays healthy or just misses a minimal amount of time, we're probably going to look back next year at his auction price and say that he was an absolute steal. But I think as of now, his current AAV is pretty much right where it should be.
So we're looking at it as just a just right type of player, huh? So the actual the top 5 quarterback is actually in play.
Yeah,
Ladies
I
and
think
gentlemen,
so.
looking at it, I 100% agree with this, because if you look at like what he did so he played 4 games. Like you said, week 1 and 2 he played. He got knocked out. He came back week 4, and then was officially knocked out week 5.
Mhm.
But in those 4 games, he had 4 rushing touchdowns total in that time frame. Yeah, in week 5 he didn't do anything because he was knocked out fast. He only had 12 attempts in that game, 98 yards, and 5 rushing yards. But prior to that, week 1, 40 rushing yards. Week 2, 55 rushing yards. Week 4, this is the week I like, 56 rushing yards. So you're almost getting a free touchdown in points just off the rushing yards there alone. But the rushing touchdowns there too, Week 1, 1 rushing. Week 2 against Houston, he had 2. Week 4 against the Rams, he had 1. And the fantasy points he had, he finished as the number 4 quarterback week 1, number 19 in week 2, back up to the number 2 in week 4. And then with the down in week 5, he finished as a QB 29. So, the cream is worth the squeeze on that one, I feel like. So getting him at QB 5, especially over a player like CJ Stroud and Joe Burrow, because I don't see their rushing upside in fantasy being that high as what Anthony Richardson can be, especially with the likes of Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman around him. That offense is going to cook. Anthony Richardson's going to cook, and I can definitely see a QB1 overall finish coming out of Anthony Richardson this year.
Yeah, he's the player next year that if everything sort of goes right for him, he could be the most expensive fantasy quarterback next year. I could totally see that happening in all formats across the board.
He could be what Josh Allen is as of right now.
Yep.
Marco, what's your thoughts about Anthony Richardson? Do you think he's too high, too low, or just right now based on AAV?
Well, I mean, looking at his plot point here, he's all over the map. It looks like where he's down in the 20s and then up to 40 and 50.
Well, this is overall too. This is 1 QB and Superflex combined, so it's going.
That's 1 QB and Superflex altogether. Okay, so that makes a little more sense. Well, I think he's kind of priced pretty appropriately. I think he's again right behind that tier of elites that I'm putting clearly above any of the other quarterbacks. So I think right there he's probably at the top of the list next to where he's got the rushing upside, and yeah, I don't have a problem with where he's going, especially if these plot points are saying Superflex is the higher and then redraft and then 1 QB is the lower. I would say that makes good sense.
All right, so we are all in favor of Anthony Richardson this year. All right, guys, my favorite one coming up right now. The hate is going too far here on Najee Harris. Yes, he sucked last year. He was a solid RB2 for all of us last year, if it worked out well, if he got you the touchdowns. But we get Arthur Smith here. And with getting Arthur Smith, what does Arthur Smith like to do? he likes to run the ball. And Jalen Warren, yeah, he's going to be there also. Is Jalen Warren the Tyler Algier of this offense? Or is he the Bijan Robinson of this offense? You know, Arthur Smith made us hate him so much because of the way he didn't use Bijan Robinson last year. But with Najee Harris, this is his contract year. I think the hate's going too far with Najee Harris here. I mean, come on. How can he be? I mean, yeah, he's going as an RB2, which is perfect for pricing. $14 overall. You know, basically I round up, $13.83, make it 14. But he's RB24 and 1QB going for $14. RB20 and Superflex going for 13.5. So, basically the same price, not really going to make much of a difference. He's gone as high as $20, as low as $6. So it all depends on the nomination. But when I look at him, he's going way too low for me. I mean, come on, back in RB2, I feel like he has RB1 upside here, especially with the way that offensive line is building up. What are your guys' thoughts on him? Mark, I'm gonna kick it off to you.
More talk of why we are drafting 0 and hero RB as much as we are. I agree. And you know what? Like, I get that people were disappointed with the split that Bijan saw versus Algier. But if you take that split and you look at Harris and Warren, I don't think you're nearly as unhappy when you look, because I don't think Najee can carry that full load the way Bijan can. I think you're looking at two completely different players. If you incorporate that Arthur Smith split, I would imagine that you're actually feeling pretty good about both running backs, and both running backs for me are targets. I still think Najee probably leads the backfield when it comes down to the red zone, and so I think those touchdowns are really what's going to make the difference. So I think part of it is because people like Jalen Warren so much that there's kind of, within a draft room, there's going to be it's going to be a fight of like how many Najee lovers are there versus how many Jalen Warren lovers, and if there's more Jalen Warren lovers, he might go more expensive than Najee. But I agree. I think he's probably still going to end up leading the backfield. I just I don't think there's any reason he should probably be going this low, but I'm gonna accept it and enjoy it while I can.
Right? All right, Adam, how do you feel about him? You feel the same way like Mark and I feel right now?
Yeah, and I think Mark made a great point. I think the hype surrounding Jalen Warren has pushed Najee's price down. And if he's someone that you can get in your auction draft for like $10 or less, that's an easy buy all day. Because at worst, he's going to be an RB2 for your team, a solid RB2. The volume's going to be there. He's probably going to be the red zone back, like Mark said. He's still going to catch passes. Like, that's not going away. He's got, a better quarterback now in Russell Wilson. I think the team is probably going to be better. So yeah, I'm all on board with Najee being too low. All
right, man. We are on board with Najee. I mean, can we get any type of like negativity going here? Like, we got to start going against each other, guys. Everyone's going to think that, this is all scripted, that we knew what was going on. I mean, it is kind of scripted, but we knew what we're talking about. But come on. All right. One running back that I liked last year, but I don't know if I could be on the same with him this year. That's going to be James Cook. Adam, are we too high, too low, or just right on James Cook?
James Cook. We are too high on James Cook.
Ooh-wee. Let's hear it.
We are much too high on James Cook. He's going for right around $23. That's his like overall AAV. It's the 14th most expensive running back overall, across the board for auction drafts. And Cook's snap percentage was bad last season. He only played 54% of the snaps, and for the second year in a row, only had 2 rushing touchdowns. Back-to-back years with 2 rushing touchdowns. He has struggled with ball security. He had 5 fumbles, 9 drop passes, and an absolute atrocious pass blocking grade of 22.1, which is the second worst in the league according to PFF. And I think when Buffalo drafted Cook, they had in mind that he was going to be like their all-purpose back, like their do-it-all back. But he was regularly replaced last season by Latavius Murray in critical passing situations. And now the Bills drafted Ray Davis, who's a better pass protector, and he's probably a better pass catcher than Cook. I mean, it was like all over his draft profile. Those were like two of his biggest strengths was pass protecting and catching. So he's probably going to step in and become the Bills' immediate RB2 and potentially an RB1 if Cook continues to underperform or gets injured. So I guess that's kind of the long way of saying that I wouldn't spend that much for Cook. Much, much too high, in my opinion.
Mark, how you feel about James Cook right now? Is it too high, too low, or just right for you? You're on mute.
Oh.
It's my MO, my friends. Looking at the 6 running backs that are going after him in AAV, I would definitely like all those players over James Cook at that price. And I think I'd like to see Cook more down toward the Aaron Jones, Ramondre Stevenson level, I imagine. In general, Buffalo historically has usually platooned a committee in the backfield, and generally they've been pretty hard to figure out how it's going to break up, especially now with Josh Allen, who takes a lot of the goal line touches. So I think, when they were using him at the second half of the season, he was sort of helping keep, Josh Allen from putting too much air in the ball on the back end and running the ball and sort of using his running back catches as rushes. So I think he's okay. I think he can give you some PPR upside, but yeah, I don't think he's somebody you want to count on as like an every down or a week to week RB1, or I know he's really high end RB2. But again, you can make a lot of running backs your RB2. So I think when you're looking at, Najee Harris for $13, Raheem Mostert for $11, and you say, I think I'd rather have that price set for RB2. So yeah, that would be my guess. But people want to pay for running backs, I think, is what happens. Is he's one of those guys that if you consider him part of that tier, he's the last one, and I think he's one of those players that is probably going to consistently still get that upper end price. So I think he's just a pretty safe avoid.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what a lot of people actually remember is what he did in week 14, week 15 against Kansas City and Dallas when he was going over 140 plus yards between those two games. Basically finished as the top 5 running back. He finished as the RB3 in week 14 against Kansas City with 141 total yards and a touchdown. And then week 15 against Dallas, he just lit them up for 221 total yards and 2 touchdowns to finish as the RB2 overall. But what kills me, and like you guys said, is the carries he gets. Like, his carries aren't as efficient or as great as we think or as we'd like them to be. The red zone carries is what's really going to help push those touchdowns up. And the most he had was 5 red zone carries in week 17 against New England. And I don't see him still being that red zone back, especially with Ray Davis there. Ray Davis is more of the plotter now. You got to actually have a good goal line back. And like both you guys hit the nail on the head. Like, I think we're valuing him also too high. Like, we're peak valuing him based on what he did in the playoffs. And there was another Buffalo Bill that we did that to in the playoffs. His name was Gabe Davis, and we all overdrafted him way too high after that playoff series, and that bit us in the butt. But you look at James Cook overall, his fantasy points per game was ranked number 19th last season based on Player Profiler. So if I can get him as a back-end RB2, I'd feel better. But as a high-end RB2, I'm also out, guys. So good to be out on that one, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. And then we're going to go to one of my favorite ones, because I'm going to keep it Buffalo style on this one, because I feel like this guy is a player in Josh Allen going as a QB1. I understand the 15 total touchdowns he had last season, how he was dominating fantasy. But to me, it's just way too high. You lose Stephon Diggs. You lost all the offense. You have a whole bunch of no-name wide receivers now. Okay, you have Curtis Samuel. You drafted Keon Coleman. But you have do you really have a true sign of an alpha? I just don't see it. Like, they're going to have to, Josh Allen has to do something. Yeah, I mean, Dalton Kincaid could be that number, that number 1 receiver for him, but does he have that ability to take the next step or the next level that I'd like to see? I hope so. But to getting Josh Allen, being $4 or $5 more than the next quarterback after him, if Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, give me those guys instead over Josh Allen. I mean, yeah, if Josh Allen, if I can get him for a cheap value, I would do it. But as the QB1, dude, guys, I'm so out on him. Adam, how you feel about him?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that he is probably going to not have as many rushing attempts and touchdowns this year. The coaches, early reports say they don't want him to run as much. You pointed out they don't have really a true alpha. So I think that's going to hurt his fantasy stock. It's just historically, it's very unlikely for him to repeat as the QB1. So I think that's probably not looking so great. He probably still finishes like as a QB1, but to finish as the QB1 for fantasy, I don't see that happening. And like you said, I would rather have Mahomes, Hurts, Lamar, Richardson, any of those couple guys right behind him that you can get for significantly less over Allen. As the most expensive quarterback on the board, that's too high for me.
Mark, are you gonna make it a clean sweep with us, or you think he's just right based on the price? I mean, we saw in your mock last week you took him at $21. He was the highest quarterback in the one QB league, but but overall, is it still too high, too low, or just right?
Right. So that price was just right for me. I love getting Josh Allen at 21. It's probably too low in my mind, but here's the issue that I really have. I have no problem with his superflex value because if you look at the scatter plot here, it's got superflex and one quarterback mix in. Mm-hmm. If you look at his superflex price, he's really only about $50, which I think is fair for the guy who's going number one overall in most fantasy leagues, or at least most superflex leagues. That's more than fair. But the real problem I have is the $33 or $34 one QB Josh Allen price. That's ridiculous. I don't know why he was going for that high at whatever point. But yeah, I think any QB, once you get over the $30 range, I mean, 15% on your quarterback is pretty high. And, he was going as high as 37 in some of our one QB mocks. And that's just, hamstringing way too much of your budget, especially when you can get a lot of quarterbacks for under $5 that are going to be just fine as your QB1. So I think Superflex, I'm fine with it. I do kind of agree that he might be, we might be overvaluing him a little bit industry wide as far as like how much better he is as QB1 than everybody else. But I still can. I think Superflex is fine. It's just the one QB that really gets me super confused.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand where you're coming from, but like to think that he's going to repeat as a QB1, I just don't see it happening. And you got a Yingling. You got a Pennsylvania home beer. Oh my God! I was like, oh, I saw the brown can tip up. I'm like, that's a Yingling.
It's only about an hour from my house, so.
Oh, well, I know where I'm going when I go see Mark.
There you go, America's oldest.
Oh, yeah, it's a great beer. I love it. All right, Mark, we're moving on to you. Going back, does this guy have the potential to repeat as a wide receiver 1? Are we looking at Justin Jefferson to finish as a wide receiver 1 again? Based on his value, is he too high, too low, or just right in your eyes? I mean, you got to think, new quarterback, no more Kirk Cousins. How's this offense going to turn out with him?
Okay, so I'm really looking strictly at the dollar value. He's kind of in that bottom of most people's, what I would call my elite tier. Behind Lamb, Tyreek, maybe Jamar, Amon-Ra. I have AJ Brown and Puka in there too as well. But I really think that Justin Jefferson is still probably, if every one of these players had the same quarterback, I think in my mind I'd still take Justin Jefferson over all of them as the receiver talent. So when I see CD Lamb go for 56 average auction value, um, you want a number one wide receiver, one of those first 5 or 6 guys. I think in most leagues you're paying $50, right? Like I think that's just how it's going to go in a $200 auction. So I am still more than happy paying for Justin Jefferson at $50. I think last year, if you got Justin Jefferson for $50, you'd say that's a steal. I've seen him go for more than $10 higher than that, and that's, I'm not saying I want to do that, but $50 for your number one receiver, he's probably going to be one of the top 5 guys. I don't see a reason why you have to mess with anything else. And in Superflex, it's not much different. $42. There's that little bit of a discount because you're paying up the price of quarterbacks, and they're kind of pushing those wide receivers a little farther down the first round of the draft board. But for $42, I think those are 2 really fair prices for an obvious wide receiver 1 candidate.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I'm still kind of nervous with JJ McCarthy being there because I watched how he played at Michigan, not knowing, he hasn't really had actually, they were never forced to throw. So Jim Harbaugh was actually kind of able to focus on offense more in the running because the offensive line, Blake Corum, great running back, Donovan Edwards, another great running back. He's able to run the ball, kind of hide flaws in a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, look at Colin Kaepernick at San Francisco after Jim Harbaugh left. He fell apart, didn't become the same. Adam, do you still like Justin Jefferson at the current price of $50? Actually, 46 here right now.
Before the news of the whole Jordan Addison thing, I probably would have said that he was maybe a little bit too expensive. But now I'm back in he's in that just right category. Because we don't know what's going to happen with Addison. He might get suspended, for 2 games, 3 games, whatever it is. Hawkinson, the reports have been saying reports came out today, said that, he's well, he's making good progress. He's ahead of his, ACL recovery. But, who knows if that's just coach speak or not. And Mark really hit the nail on the head. Jefferson probably out of the elite tier of these wide receivers, just on pure talent alone, he's probably like the most talented wide receiver we've seen in a very long time. So just with those unknown factors of Addison being out, he's going to have his targets are going to be funneled towards him. We don't know what's going on with Hawkinson. So yeah, for those unknown factors, I think he's priced right now.
And if I could just add one thing in, I'm realizing why Ryan is in on Pitts and I am out, and why he's not quite in on Jefferson and I am in. I am of the belief that Justin Jefferson made Kirk Cousins what he is as a Viking, and not the other way around. And especially with like the Achilles injury, going into an unproven core like the Falcons, that's kind of where there's a lot more trepidation for me. I have the same fear with Drake London too. And so like I think that with JJ McCarthy coming in, yeah, it's a young quarterback and that's scary. But I'm willing to take the risk on a guy like Jefferson because I've seen him do it with Nick Mullins, with a number of different bad quarterbacks. And you know what? From what I'm hearing, it's most likely going to be Sam Darnold anyway. I'm not saying that Sam Darnold is an amazing quarterback, but you know what? Like he was able to put up some number one, QB1 weeks while he was with Carolina, even though it didn't last long. He looked pretty good in San Francisco. He might be rejuvenating himself enough that, if he's throwing to Justin Jefferson and Justin Jefferson is saying, get me the ball, he's gonna, he might have an all-time year for all we know. They don't have that much to play for other than maybe just get Justin Jefferson a record. So it doesn't, like, it wouldn't surprise me if he's having a good year, that's just what their goal is by halfway through the season.
Sounds like a lot of fun because I in an auction draft I'm currently in right now, I have Jamar Chase and I have Justin Jefferson on my team.
Yeah, that's not a lot of money. I saw that. That's not even fair.
And I just picked up Josh Allen, super cheap compared to the other quarterbacks. I got him for I think $69, and every quarterback's going for 80 plus. And I don't know how I got him. All right, I missed out on Patrick Mahomes, who also went for $60. So I can't knock those prices, but you convinced me, guys. I feel like now that he's also just right. When we look at Justin Jefferson's value. Thanks for convincing me, Mark. I feel a lot better now, knowing that I have a wide receiver 2 behind Jamar Chase, who is also can be the wide receiver 1 for me.
Yeah.
Adam, going back to you again, man. There's one player that you've been talking about all summer long. One player that most of us don't even think about because a lot of us love him, and we also love to hate him. And we're going to go with Taysom Hill here.
Yeah.
Are we too high, too low, or just right?
Well, we are much, much too low on Taysom Hill. I have been banging the drum, and I'm not going to stop all summer long for Taysom Hill. I mean, his price is just insane to me. That little bump in that little tick up in the graph that you see at the very end, that was his only, I think, $2 price in all the mock drafts that we've done so far. Every other mock draft, he's either gone undrafted or just $1. So it's just crazy to me. Hill is one of the most versatile players. He logged, let me see if I got this right. So he logged 33 snaps at wide receiver last year, 74 snaps at tight end, 173 in the slot, and 81 rushing attempts all last season. I mean, just amazing. He's like the ultimate chess piece for the Saints. He averaged 25 rushing yards and 18 receiving yards per game and scored a total of 4 rushing touchdowns, a passing touchdown, and 2 receiving touchdowns. And I think as of yesterday or the day before, he was interviewed, and Hill actually told reporters that he's taking on even more roles this year. So if you're in the camp of wanting to avoid spending a lot, if you want to avoid spending big on tight end, Hill is an option that I think could pay off massively. And I think I'm just going to keep talking about him. And unfortunately, I think his price is probably going to go up a little bit because of that. But he's a guy that I'm just going to be talking about all summer long.
Bid, bid, bid. I am going to bid on him and get him for that $1. And bid is a secret word this week, guys. If you're trying to get into that listener league, bid is the word. So I like to keep it longer because I was looking at the timing. I'm like, I'm seeing how long I can get it to go. I want people to see it, to try to find it. And we have a lot of listeners that have already found it, guys. The first word. And I didn't think they were going to find it as long because you really have to listen in deep to it. But here, you got to do the same thing again. But I'm behind you on this one, Adam. Taysom Hill is definitely the player worth getting right now, especially if you can put him in your tight end slot. Most leagues either have him as QB. I think a lot of sites are switching him just QB, but I know Sleeper has him as QB and tight end.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can get him on Sleeper, for sure, like I'll take him for that $1 bid, no problem, all day long. I mean, look at it. He's been drafted 11 times, a max bid of $2. My guess is you were that max bid of $2 because you're like, I'm going to get him either way. He's well worth it. Yeah. Mark, are you in or out on Taysom Hill?
I don't disagree that he's undervalued. Like if he's going undrafted, he probably should be drafted. I agree with that, but I don't know if he needs to go much more than $1 or $2 on a regular basis. Like there are just so many tight end options after the top 12 that I think it disincentivizes you to pay more than that for Taysom Hill, even if you like him more than that price, if that makes sense. But I can't say that if he's your target at the end of the draft, you have the dollars, that if you want to spend $4 or $5 on him, I'm not going to say don't do that necessarily. I'm just kind of thinking that he's in a group of, and a lot of the tight ends I kind of like at the $1 or $2 price range. So it's just kind of difficult to want to pay more than $1. I think you're really what's happening, and Adam's getting him probably pretty easily this way, is he's near the end of the draft. You put him up for auction at $1. Someone maybe bids $2, and that's the end of it, right? So for the most part, you're getting him for $1. I don't think he needs to go more than that, but I think maybe we need to be clicking the button and nominating him with a little more priority than we are.
100%. All right, guys. Have you guys been watching Receiver on Netflix here?
I haven't gotten into it yet, but I wanna check it out. Honestly,
Yeah.
I'm a little behind on that television. Like I'm behind on Hard Knocks too. But I'm hoping this week I can kind of get myself back and ramped up in all those.
Yeah, because Justin Jefferson's in it, but there's also another good receiver who's in it. That's Deebo Samuel. Mark, are we too high, too low, or just right on Deebo Samuel right now?
Oh my gosh, we are too low on Deebo Samuel. Okay, so I'm looking at. I put him up against Garrett Wilson right now. Garrett Wilson is the first player in my gold tier. He's my wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8, wide receiver 8. I have him as the first player in my gold tier. I have Deebo Samuel also my gold tier. I don't have him much farther behind. I believe he's 11 or 12. I don't have them up right here with me. But if you're looking at the auction price here, this is one QB. Garrett Wilson is going for over $40 consistency. Deebo is going for $20 to $24 basically every time. And to be honest, again, it's one of those ideas where I like the passing scheme in San Francisco, and I like the offense as a whole more than I believe in the Jets right now. And while I like Garrett Wilson as a talent, I don't think he's that much better than Deebo. I like the offense better, and if you're going to give him to me at half the cost, I'm going to eat that up all day. If you look at it in Superflex, it's a little bit better, maybe, but I mean, again, Garrett Wilson, for the most part, he's going in the mid 30s on an average here, while Deebo's going in the low 20s. So there are a lot of wide receivers that I have in my gold tier that I think are too low, and I can get, and a couple of them being like Nico Collins, DK Metcalf. I still think they're a little too low. But when I look at Deebo down at $21, I think he easily has top 15 upside. And to get him at half the price just seems like absolute ceiling.
Right. Adam, being a California native, do you agree with Mark? Are we too high, too low, or just right with Deebo Samuel here?
Well, I'm not a 49ers fan, but yes, I am from California. Deebo, he's one of those guys, like, I don't know. I don't find myself drafting a lot of him. I think that and first of all, I don't think Brandon Ayuk is getting traded. So I'm just going to put that out there. At least this season, I don't think he's going anywhere. If that were to change, if Ayuk somehow got traded, which again, don't think it's going to happen, but if he did, then I think Deebo's value and price just absolutely skyrockets. But I think kind of like what I said with Kittle a little bit, like he's kind of a little bit of a polarizing player, I feel, in fantasy. Some people really like him. Some people try to avoid him. I don't particularly target or avoid him. I think that the target competition is a little tough because he just has so many weapons in San Francisco. We don't need to go over all of them, but there's so much target competition there. I like Deebo more as like a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3, more so than like a low-end wide receiver 1. And I've heard people talk about him thinking that he could be a wide receiver 1. I'm not quite there. So I think he's still a little too expensive for me, but I'm not going to begrudge anyone from taking him because he's an amazing talent. He's got just unbelievable yards after catch potential. So he's got a lot going for him. He's on a good offense. And like we said last week, you're not just investing in the player, you're investing in the offense. So there's worse wide receivers and worse teams you could be investing on, but he's not someone that I'm like super heavily targeting in my auction drafts.
No, I actually like his value quite a bit. I mean, like, I think everyone's still trying to chase that 2021 season where he had 1,400 yards and 6 touchdowns. It was the rushing game that definitely brought him to that next level because he's like the Konami code of like wide receivers because he can actually take that jet sweep and take it up the field for 60 yards and a touchdown. But the hate's going too far. The finish as fantasy points, he was wide receiver 28 in 2022, wide receiver 12 in 2023. And looking at him now, wide receiver 19, we're starting to fall on him. So I am definitely thinking he is way too low also on that.
And one thing I'd like to point out as well, if you look over on Underdog, Garrett Wilson versus Deebo Samuel, they're both in the second round, less than 7 picks apart. And whether or not you believe in Deebo, I just feel, I mean, like, I get that he's wide receiver, but I just feel like that price difference, and it's probably true that Garrett Wilson's also probably going too high, but I don't see why, why he's maxing at $24 in a 1 QB. Like, that just is like, that's his highest he's been bid up to at any point is $24, when, I mean, like, I would have no problem going. This is why I get him so much. I could see myself going up to 27 or 28. I don't see why he couldn't be an easy wide receiver 2 pick for most teams. He's being valued as a wide receiver 2. He's like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because again, he was the wide receiver 12 last year. Garrett Wilson was the wide receiver 30. Like, he was outside the wide receiver 30, and he's going in the top 10. So, like, something's not right here.
Come on, Mark, the hype's there, You gotta go along with it.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers bum Achilles. I can't wait for that.
Yes, 2.0. Here we go. Garrett Wilson's gonna bounce back. What was supposed to happen this year is gonna happen this year. Well, actually, I said that wrong. What's gonna happen last year? What was supposed to happen is gonna happen this year, and Garrett Wilson's supposed to finish as a top 5 wide receiver. So that's how it's supposed to go. But it's not probably. But you're right. It's probably not going to. And we're not huge fans of Aaron Rodgers in here, I feel like. Which brings me to my last.
It's not anything against old Aaron as a quarterback. He's been great throughout his career. But I mean, like, again, like, he's coming off an Achilles injury. He's 40 years old. Like, there's not. It's not like there's a whole bunch of, like, really good. He was good years ago now, and hasn't played in over a year, and over 40, coming off an injury. I'm not saying that he can't shock me, but I'm saying I'd rather be shocked than bet on that.
Oh yeah. Old age catches up to you usually quicker than you expect. I mean, only reason why I'm not a fan. I mean, I like Aaron Rodgers as a person, and I don't hate him. The real reason why I don't like him as a quarterback is because I'm a Lions fan, and he was Packers quarterback at one time, which is also Adam's favorite team. If anyone want to know?
He's a little bit of a weird guy. He's a weird guy.
Yeah, a little bit interesting. All right, guys. Last player we're going to come up with here, and that's Cooper Kupp. Now, the value of Cooper Kupp, I feel, is going insane. And I mean, you look at that, wide receiver 19. Okay, yeah, he didn't have that great of a wide receiver season. But if you compare him to Puka Nacua, who's being drafted as a top 5 wide receiver, Cooper Kupp is way too low. We keep forgetting Cooper Kupp was injured last season. And the value that we're getting at right now, I feel actually it's not too low. It is too low, but it's also just right. Because what he can return is a hell of a value. I feel like he has the potential to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense still. He is a wide receiver 1. Puka Nacua is a 5th round draft pick who benefited with Cooper Kupp being injured, I feel like. And with both of them on the field, it was almost like a 50-50 split between who was going to get the targets and the receptions. So I see a nice bounce back coming here from Cooper Kupp on this one. Adam, how do you feel about Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to Deebo, like, I think that, I mean, their prices are very similar, but I think that I would personally rather, draft Kupp as if I can get him as a wide receiver 2 over Deebo, just because I think that there's going to be less target competition. They don't really have a great tight end in LA. I think the tight end is sort of a little bit ambiguous right now. And the Rams ran the most 11 personnel in the NFL last year, three wide receiver sets. So Kupp is like never coming off the field. He's there all the time. And even though they weren't the most pass heavy team in the league, the Rams, like, Kupp is just, he's everywhere. Like, he's just never coming off the field. He's a major red zone threat. And yeah, I think he's due for a huge bounce back year. Same with Stafford. I think the hype around Puka's gotten a little crazy. just because he had such an amazing rookie season. But I think Kupp is still the number one wide receiver in LA, and I think he could potentially be like a huge value this year and return like wide receiver one numbers. Absolutely.
I love it. All right, I'm you and I on the same page. Mark, can you make it a clean sweep here for us? How do you feel about Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, I in general, I feel like a lot of these these back end wide receiver twos, they're all still a little too cheap in general. I do like Cooper Kupp. I like Deebo more, so I'm gonna push him up and say he's too low. But I also think Cooper Kupp belongs in this list of players that are kind of just a little too low. And I think if you notice in some of our auction drafts that running back ends up getting paid up sometimes with bot bot activity. So I think in some leagues, maybe a few of these wide receivers will end up going where they should be appropriately valued. But yeah, no, I'm a huge believer in the Rams. I was big into the Rams when everyone was sleeping on them last year. And I agree that Cooper Kupp, I think it's kind of like it was with Woods and Kupp more than it is how we have it now, where I think they're more priced similarly together, where you're thinking of both of them as top 15 guys maybe, than we necessarily should put one of them in the elite tier and one of them in my gold tier. It's worth a consideration for me to pull Puka out, but I think he's still pretty firmly like my wide receiver 7, and he's not coming out of that spot behind anybody. But I think really like this is one of the teams that I think is easy candidate for have two guys in the top 15. He's just one of those candidates, and Cooper Kupp can easily make it happen. I think his price behind Puka is mostly because of age, and he's in his 30s and he's coming off injury, and I get why he's being priced down. In general, I think most of these wide receivers are too cheap. But yeah, I would love to see all these guys. I mean, I'd love for them to stay at this price, really. But it's probably stands that most of these guys can probably get a little bit of a bump, maybe that $24 to $28 range for most of these wide receiver twos.
Solid, guys. All right. And to wrap it up, we have a question. And this is my favorite question for you two guys, because you guys are the zero RB drafters here over me. And the question comes from Rankin. It says, in zero RB builds, how much are you targeted to spend on the RB2 slots, dollar or percentage of budget? And who are your top targets who can make an impact that late in the draft? Adam, I'm going to give this off to you. What RB2 are you usually trying to target? And how much are you willing to budget on that?
So I have absolutely been locked in on zero RB this year, and I'm trying to spend as little as possible and just really trying to hammer my wide receiver and flex spots. Couple guys I've been targeting are like Jerome Ford. He's been someone that you can get for super cheap at the end of drafts. And again, we don't know what's going on with Nick Chubb. Another guy I like targeting is Tajay Spears. Could potentially be having like just a ton of pass work in Tennessee. But yeah, I mean, and if there's people out there that, have yet to try a zero RB build, give it a shot. Get your RBs late in the draft. Someone like a Jalen Warren, again, is a good candidate. And just see how you can build your roster like around your wide receivers, your tight ends, and your quarterbacks, and just try it out. Like, I think you're going to love how your team looks, and you will become a zero RB believer.
All right, I love it. Mark, do you feel the same way? How much are you targeting to spend on your RB2 in the slot? And who are your top targets?
So for the most part, I'm kind of looking, we're looking at zero RB. So that would mean that I don't have any running back in my nucleus, my first 5 or 6 players, if we're going to just sort of keep to that. And then that goes down to, okay, so my nucleus is usually about 65 to 75% of my budget, 70%, somewhere in there. So really, once I get into that zero RB drafting kind of realm, I'm looking at maybe 25 to 30% of my budget left to kind of work with that. So if I can really make it happen, and I can just spend like $12 on my first running back, I would love to be able to do that. $10, $12. But I also understand that you also have to understand that there might be a bidding war and there might be other players that are still trying to go zero RB. But really, what I found is there are quite a few players in the RB3 and late RB2 range that I'm really happy to have as my number one. James Conner, Raheem Mostert, Tajay Spears, or even Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones. A lot of these guys that are either older guys in new situations, players who are just they're kind of being left for dead, even though they have shown that they can still continue to produce. Najee Harris again, Jalen Warren. There's that whole pocket of running backs in sort of the late RB2, early RB3 range that all can sort of be a good first zero RB target. And then you're just kind of looking, I kind of am trying to have that first running back. Again, my target is like $12. If I can spend like $12, I'm happy on that. If it ends up being 15, that's fine. You have to adjust if that's the case, but really it kind of depends on where you are. You want to just make sure you have enough money after your nucleus is spent that you can at least like guarantee that you're going to land one of those few guys that you are comfortable with as your running back one. Zach Moss, another great option.
Yeah.
There are so many different options you can go with. It's just getting like 2 or 3 of those guys in that $10 to $12 range if you can make it work. Or maybe even cheaper, but still, like, you just want a couple guys in that platoon you can trust to get you out of the gate. And then on top of you having a few guys that you believe in as committee kind of piecemeal, what am I trying to say? Platoon kind of backs. You're also going to have the waiver wire. So, like, understand that, like, part of it is, like, your money is in your waiver budget for running backs more than just what's at your auction draft.
All right, guys. That's a wrap it up here for episode 7. If you guys could, please like, subscribe, and share this with everyone that you know. Absolute Auction Podcast. For Adam, you can find him at Always Auction on Twitter. For Mark, you can find him at Primetime Mock. And for myself, you can find me at Ryan_FFB. It's Absolute Auction Podcast. We'll see you guys next week.